This week's episode is sponsored by Beducated.com. You can go to Beducated.com and put in the code ASK for 40% off the annual membership and a free 24-hour trial before you're even charged. Beducated is like the Netflix of sex education, so go check it out. Hey, everybody. We are here for a fun episode today. We're going to get into gender roles. What should they be? What are they? How much say do we have in it? What really works? But before we get into our guest and topic today, I'm going to read the review of the week. So this one says, overcoming purity culture. As someone who was raised in purity culture, this podcast has been helpful in reclaiming my sexuality. 5 stars. So thank you for this review. And if this is your review and you're listening, reach out to us. You actually have won a bundle of sex and relationship books. So we will hook you up, and thank you for supporting the show. So today's guest is Marc Katz, and I know him personally, and he's great, but I'm going to read his official bio before we get into today's discussion. So Marc Katz became the world's first dating coach in 2003, specializing in helping smart, successful women create lasting love. He's the author of 4 books. His Love You podcast has over 2 million downloads, and he's been featured in hundreds of media outlets, including Today, the New York Times, and the Wall Street Journal. It's an unlikely career for a man, much less a man who was once called a serial dater by CNN, yet that's what makes Katz so unique. By helping women understand men, what they think, how they act, what they want, he encourages them to raise the bar on what to expect from men and never again settle for a dissatisfying relationship. Evan's coaching philosophy is based on the belief that successful relationships require a combination of emotional intelligence, self-awareness, and practical skills. He teaches his clients to communicate effectively, set healthy boundaries, and navigate the ups and downs of dating with confidence. Known for his honesty and directness, Evan is not afraid to challenge his clients and push them out of their comfort zones, but he always does so in a supportive and non-judgmental way. His goal is to help women break free from limiting beliefs and behaviors that are holding them back and to empower them to create the love life they deserve. Now happily married for 15 years, Evan believes you can find love no matter where you live, how old you are, or how challenging your previous relationships were. And he has the results to prove it. Over 13,000 women have graduated from Love You, Evan's coaching program and community for women who are tired of being alone, exhausted by dating, and ready for a truly equal partner. By providing hands-on support, structure, and accountability, Evan teaches women to become the CEOs of their love lives and attract high-value, commitment-oriented partners. If you're an intelligent, successful woman who feels like you have everything except for love, Evan offers a step-by-step action plan to finally get the life of your dreams. He lives in Los Angeles with his incredibly cool, incredibly patient wife and their 2 surprisingly funny children. So welcome, Evan. So excited to have you here.
I'm so embarrassed by that bio. You could have done like the 1-paragraph version of that. That was the official one. The longer it was going, I was like, oh, please stop.
I know everyone gets like that during their bio.
I mean, it's all true. Yeah.
I think it's good. It really captures your style. And so I will also just say at the beginning of this episode, I am one of Evan's graduates. And he knows his shit and he really cares. And he will also call you out on your bullshit. And we have to be honest that a lot of us need that. Right?
Well, I'm grateful to be here. I'm really excited. I'm proud of what you've created for yourself, Heather.
Thank
you. Always a star student. I knew you were going places.
I'll take it. Thank you. The reason I reached out to Evan about this episode in particular is because I was listening to his podcast, Love You, which is also excellent. You should check it out. And he did an episode recently, I think it was in April, about gender roles. And I was just like, oh, this is so good. I want to have him come on the show and talk about this topic with people, because I just think we're in an interesting phase of our culture, kind of, where it's when my parents were growing up, it was, more of the 1950s housewife and really clear, more traditional gender roles. And then now it's kind of are you going to be criticized as a woman if you don't work outside the house? Or is it weird if you're a stay-at-home dad? And then are you being emasculated? So I just feel there's all this confusion and what are your thoughts on this topic, I guess, just broadly? I mean, you had some really good things to say, and I know you also have some personal experience with it.
No, man, I think no matter what I say, I'm going to end up putting my foot in my mouth and I'm going to accidentally piss someone off.
That's okay.
It's not my attention. If
No.
anything, what we're doing is observing what's going on and trying to make
Yes.
sense of all the
Yes.
changes. It's not like I got a horse in the race about how things are supposed to be. But as a coach for women, I'm
Mm-hmm.
hearing their experience and what they're wrestling with. I think it's safe to say that it's a confusing time for a number of reasons. So,
Right.
where do you want to jump into this?
So one of the things you brought up in your episode was this article about gay and lesbian relationships that I thought was so interesting. And it was kind of like, what can we learn from gay and lesbian relationships and kind of bring into hetero relationships as well?
I'm going to try to come up with a definition of happiness, which is a bit.
Oh.
Happiness is when your actions and your goals are aligned, right? If you are a extrovert and you take a job as a night watchman, you're probably not
Mm-hmm.
going to be very happy because the thing you're
Right.
doing is not leading you towards happiness. So I
Right.
think there's always like this Venn diagram of what we want to be doing, what we actually are doing, etc.
Right.
As I'm thinking out loud about the question you just posed,
Mm-hmm.
my guess is that clarity in gender roles within a relationship are going to dictate the satisfaction of the relationship. It's the fact
Mm.
when they don't have clarity, that's where all the friction is going to come in. So I
Yes.
would guess that the gay lesbian relationships
Mm-hmm.
in that article were better because they were more egalitarian,
Hmm.
unlike relationships now where man and women are both making a living, but the woman's doing the lion's share of the stuff at home.
Right.
So the women carry more emotional labor, are more
Right.
dissatisfied. Guys might be satisfied, but women are more dissatisfied because they've just
Right.
added a second job to
Right.
their job.
Yeah.
So
And I
that
think I've
will
heard that like
right.
men
So,
tend to be happier in marriage and women
right.
don't.
So
Yeah.
so you'll find that egalitarian relationships, gay lesbian relationships, because it's not gendered, are going to find a
Yeah.
more even balance between those two things. Conversely, traditional relationships are also happier because everybody kind of divides and conquers and knows their role.
Mhm.
I'm in a
Mhm.
traditional relationship, not by any design. My
Right.
wife was working when I met her. I made enough that she chose to be a stay at home mom,
Mhm.
and she handles the house and the kids, and I pay for everything and I help out where
Right.
I can. And again, I'm not saying that we're the example of anything that everybody should aspire to be, but because we both know what our roles are, it's a lot
Right.
simpler and there's no real resentment about what we're doing. So how does that land as a theory to you?
Yeah, I think the piece of clarity, I think is what's really important, because it doesn't matter what you choose. It's more about, are you clear? Have you communicated about it? And is it intentional? Because I think where people can get misaligned is like, we didn't really think about it. We just fell into these roles, but they're not actually what we want. And like you said, then that's going to lead to people not feeling happy.
And it's hard to renegotiate. And I think that's one of the things that we talked about on that Love You
Mm,
podcast was
that's fair.
we create roles for ourselves and then we later resent the role we created, right?
Yes, you did say that. And that was a great line.
And I think that works both ways, right? Like
Yeah.
I'm glad my dad was this way, but I'm glad to be the breadwinner. I wouldn't want to have my wife's chosen role. The thing she chose to do was leave work. I didn't tell her she should leave work. She chose to
Right.
do that.
Right.
But it's exhausting being the breadwinner in a certain way.
Yeah.
To know that everything rests on you, to know that if you get a birthday gift, you paid for it. Like there's a cost to that.
Yep.
Yet my wife works harder than I do because my job ends at 6:30. Her job,
Right.
she's doing permission forms for summer camp at midnight and folding laundry. Her job is nonstop. And so I think it's just really useful. We're at a moment in time where because of the pandemic, because of where society's gone, I think men are starting to get more appreciative. They see
Mm.
what
Mhm.
their wives are doing more traditionally.
Yeah. Mhm.
And the younger generation is less gendered anyway, right? But then we get into the really interesting conversation is that for the best too? Or have we created just a different set of problems now that
Right.
because women
We could
are
yeah. There's so many
women are
directions to go in
equal to
this.
men. Pay gap has been in most cities largely eliminated, right? And we could get into the science of that, but for the most part, I've got clients who are very successful, find they're more successful than a lot of the men they're meeting. So
Yeah.
this is not a problem for a lot of women. The problem is they don't want to necessarily be in the traditional masculine breadwinner
Yeah.
role. And then they resent the fact that they got that and they want the
Yeah.
guy to take care of it, but they don't necessarily want to be the little woman at home taking care of business. So I think
Right.
so we've opened up the world, we've opened up more choices, and I think women have evolved and men have half evolved.
That sounds about accurate.
In general, it's accurate. I'm not going to get into evolutionary biology. I'm not an expert in
Right.
any of this, but my observation from the outside as a guy who's
Mhm.
been married for 15 years and found a role that we both like, listening to women, middle-aged women for the most part, talk about their relationships, they are appreciative that men are more sensitive than they've ever been before.
Yeah.
They really miss old school masculinity, guys making plans, right? Not just
Yeah.
like, tell me when you want to hang out. Like a guy who like calls and plans and pays and
Right.
takes care of
Right.
business and makes the first move. And
Right.
you've got a whole generation of guys who are essentially like women. Again, I don't mean that in like a bad way, but like you have
Right.
these people who are both taking sort of passive, reactive
Mhm.
role. Well, are you going to call me? Are you going to call me?
Yep.
Are you going to pay? Are you going to pay? So now
Right.
nobody knows what anybody's doing. And a lot of women love the economic freedom, but kind of miss
I
guys taking the lead.
know.
So I'm going to stop there and let you roll with that.
I don't think you're wrong. I mean, there's so many places to go with this. And even what you said about like the younger generation just kind of identifying less with gender in general. I mean, and some of the things you're mentioning, I'm thinking those are just kind of good qualities in a human period, like even with like girlfriends, I love if someone like initiates a plan or suggests a plan. Like I kind of almost think we all love that a little bit. And even with sex, with my role, like I get a lot of dudes that are kind of like, I don't mind initiating, but like, it'd also be nice if she initiated once in a while. So I think it's like finding that balance. And I know a lot of sex coaches or like tantra teachers talk a lot about polarities and
Mhm.
how that's important for sexual attraction, like having masculine energy and feminine energy. And if you're both feminine or if you're both masculine, how maybe you're not going to have enough of that polarity. So I'm curious about that. Like if everyone's kind of moving in more of a, and I don't know that this is the case, so I hope people listening don't freak out about it. But like, if people are moving in more of an androgynous direction or a non-binary direction, like, what will that mean for polarity, and what will that mean for sexual attraction?
I don't know the answer to the
Mm-hmm.
question. I could theorize
Yeah.
that it'll either be a great boon in as
Mm-hmm.
much as you have more options on the menu. You could find something very specific to your flavor. There's infinite options. I also
Mm-hmm.
think I was talking about this with a friend in the car last night. More options creates a tremendous amount of confusion in the human brain. If you're familiar with the book The Paradox of Choice by Barry
Mm-hmm.
Schwartz, much easier to order from a menu with chicken, fish, and steak than it is to
Right.
order from a menu with 1,000 options. And that's what
Right.
online dating is.
Yep.
And the further along we get into no gender, no sex, it's just a spectrum. I would
Mm-hmm.
imagine, unlike the old, again, there's an old Woody Allen line. I don't know if you're allowed to quote Woody Allen. Being bisexual doubles your chances of getting a date. Like there's something funny about that. This is from the 70s, right?
That's a good
Like,
line.
right. So being bisexual doubles your chance of a date. You're now open to everybody.
Yeah.
I gotta guess there's a downside to that. I would think it would be particularly confusing because it's confusing for straight people to find one person they really like. Imagine you just
Yeah.
double the dating pool. Does it give you more options or more paralysis if you don't even know which gender you're going for?
Yeah. It's so fascinating. I also just interviewed Zachary Zane, and he wrote a book called Bi Slut or Boy Slut, and he's bisexual and very sexually active with all sorts of people, regardless of gender. So that could also be the option. It's just more non-monogamy to like take advantage of all the options. I don't know.
I think the point of all of these things is not that they should be shoved back in the closet metaphorically,
No,
but
no.
rather there's always a cost that goes uncalculated. If you might even remember
Yeah.
from Love You, all good qualities come with bad qualities, right?
Mm-hmm.
The charismatic guy might be a flirt who doesn't want to commit to you, and the brilliant guy
Exactly.
might be really stubborn and arrogant and dismissive of your opinions, and the rich guy
Right.
might be a workaholic.
Yes. This is
So
real. And you made us do the husband picker thing where we had to kind of look at, we're all kind of like a walking pro and con list, right? It's like you can't be human and not have anything that is a flaw. So I think
right.
understanding
So
that too.
as it pertains to this conversation,
Yeah.
more choice. No one's ever going to want to take away our choices. That's the society we're in now.
Right.
Creates a different set of unintended problems because
Right.
okay, you can be
Right.
a bi slut. I don't judge you for being a bi slut. I was just a slut without the bi. It's fine.
Yeah.
But I will tell you that longitudinal studies show that people in happy, healthy, monogamous relationships are the happiest people of all in the long run. Like
Interesting.
that's not a, like having more choice doesn't always
Yeah.
translate
Right.
to happiness any more than, I don't know, theoretically waking up every day and freelancing at a new company would be better than building a career at one
That sounds
company. Like
horrible to me. Yeah.
that's what I mean. So
Yeah.
there's something to be said for consistency and stability. The
Yep.
downside, right? Here's the downside of that. It'll get a
Right.
little boring.
Yeah, it's all a good point. And yeah, I'm thinking about the gender roles too. I've also had guys come in that I've worked with who have talked about like, oh, my wife makes more than me or my girlfriend makes more than me. And like, what is my role? And like, how do I feel like the man? And like, it sometimes would affect the sexual attraction. And so I don't equate like breadwinner necessarily as being like, has to be a woman or a man, or you're less feminine or more masculine necessarily. I get that traditionally, it was a man in that role. I feel like you can still be pretty masculine and
Well,
sexy and confident.
we
Yeah.
have to decouple that,
We have to. I totally agree.
right? Because and this is one of the things that's a little bit more challenging instead of validating. We talked about it before we got on the air.
Mm-hmm.
If you're a woman
Yeah.
and you insist that you're equal, and no one is arguing, you're equal. How could you be equal and then look down on someone who makes less than you? How could you say men and because men have been doing
Right.
this for millennia. Would anybody tell me that I settled on my wife because she made less than me? Would any woman come and say I settled
No.
because she made less than me? So why
Because then
would you be
that's
settling if you're
yeah,
with a guy who made less? It's
that
the
equates
only
our
double
worth.
standard. Every
Yeah.
double standard works against women. It's the only double standard that women are like, we're cool with this one, right? I'm equal to men, but I still want him to pay for everything. Only one.
Sometimes
Everything works against women. That one, I really still love chivalry. I got to admit.
I know. I'm like totally guilty of that myself because I'm like, I want a really progressive guy who thinks of everything like in this, new, very conscious kind of way. But then, like, yeah, if he could pay for like at least the first date or so, like he should do
And
that.
it would be even better if he paid for a lot more than that too.
Right. Like, at least that one would be great. Or if he was just like, yeah, very generous all the time, like, I wouldn't hate that,
Right.
But yeah, I can admit that that's a double standard.
And it's okay.
Mm-hmm.
There's plenty of them. I think part of the challenge of my job as a dating coach for high achieving women is that you're dealing with already a pretty small slice of the pie, right? And so what percentage of men make more than you do? And are we going to exclusively restrict ourselves to men who make more? Because men don't restrict themselves to that. So why should women restrict themselves to that? So I think it's a real conundrum if we could get past the idea that the man has to be the protector and provider because you don't need protection on a day-to-day basis and he doesn't really have to provide for you on a day-to-day basis.
So we're talking about gender roles, right? And the takeaway for me is that regardless if you have traditional gender roles or non-traditional gender roles or some kind of mixture in between, it's kind of stressful for all of us, right? There's the pressure to be the breadwinner. There's a pressure to maintain the household, to be involved with the kids, to try and do it all. And so that's where Beducated can come in because they are, first of all, the Netflix of sex education. And this week I checked out a course on Tantra for couples where it's really just about these breathing exercises, which is awesome because one of the things I see so much with couples that I work with is that they have their own individual stressors. They're not kind of in the mood for sex, and stress and pressures and burdens of, running a family if you have a family, or trying to do everything alone if you're a single person, is just too much. And so what I love about Tantra and breathing exercises that you find on Beducated is that
it really relaxes you. So these can be an amazing thing to do before sex or just as self-care, right? Like it doesn't always have to lead somewhere else. So if you guys are curious to check that out, you can go to beducated.com, put in the code ASK for 40% off their annual membership. And you'll also get a 24-hour free trial just to kind of browse around before you're even charged.
So imagine a situation, Heather, where there's a man who makes $200,000 and there's a woman who makes $50,000. In that dating courtship process, how do things work? He doesn't let her lift a finger, right? He pays for everything. Why? Because he makes $200,000. She makes a lot less.
Yeah.
It feels right. If she's
Yeah.
taking him out, something feels wrong about that.
Right.
Let's
Just
flip it
logically.
around. Woman makes $200,000. Man makes $50,000.
I know.
How should that work?
I think we have very different feelings about that as a society, which is fascinating.
Right. So this is where we get into the, okay,
Right.
are we equals or are we not equals? Because I've been in both of those situations.
Oh, really?
Mm-hmm.
So interesting. So
I've
what
been
did
in
you
both.
do when you were the guy making 50 and she made more?
It's where I first came up with these ideas. I was 31. She was 38. I
Oh.
was starting out in this business. And she was a senior vice president, owned her own condo in Santa Monica. And I'm writing people's dating profiles for $99 a pop. Within 2 weeks, we were celebrating her birthday at a 5-star hotel in Cabo. I was like, I can't do a $700 a night room. Like you understand, I'm a failed screenwriter who just found that something he can do.
Right.
So I ended up picking up half, which felt awful. Like some guy would be like, I got this. What, I'm going to bankrupt myself? I'm making 50 grand a year. I'm supposed to spend.
I know.
It was where I recognized the inherent insensitivity of that posture. Like, again, I'm not cheap. I'm poor. That's different.
Right. That is different. Yeah.
And then again, the roles were reversed, and a few years later, I mean, I got married. That was largely that situation. That's when I became really acutely aware of women want men to pick up stuff, even when they're not in the position to pick up stuff.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
If he even balks at that, then it's indicative of, a lack of thoughtfulness, generosity, and chivalry, rather than just like hey, let's look at our respective situations.
Right. And I think there's so many other ways aside from financial. Like I'm just thinking of the 5 love languages. And so maybe if, finances aren't your strong suit and you still want to kind of provide some sort of, protector, provider energy, maybe it's like holding someone or cuddling them or being their cheerleader and lifting them up or, fixing their car for them or something that like you can do that isn't necessarily about financial, but you're still able to feel, like a guy.
Well, there's a lot of models of this because very few people embody pure masculine energy, pure feminine energy. Like
Totally.
we're all sort of blends of both. I have a friend
Right.
who's got a husband who he's the artist. He's like the dreamer. She's the breadwinner. He helps out with her business, right? He does stuff to make her life better, but the rest of the time he's flying planes or going up for acting parts or writing things or playing guitar. He's always up to something or another.
Yeah.
But he's got intelligence. He's got opinions. He takes the lead in the bedroom, right? So he's a traditional man in every way apart from the money part.
Right.
And she's made peace with that. And again, I'm not saying that you, the listener, should have to make peace with it. I think the conundrum is that, and this is from my second book, While You're Still Single, women, and again, I know I sound like whatever I do, I'm mansplaining, but technically that's my job. I explain.
Yes. It's
right?
okay.
Like I have to embrace that.
We're not judging you, Evan. It's a safe space.
I have to embrace that. A lot of women want the Marlboro man.
Right.
And the sensitive artist wrapped up in one.
Yes.
All right. I want the guy who's stoic and takes care of business and makes me feel feminine and taken care of.
Yeah.
Right. But that guy doesn't want to talk about his feelings and he really doesn't want to listen to yours.
I know.
And then you find the guy you really connect with, like your best girlfriend, and sometimes he's going to be vulnerable and sometimes he's going to be weak and sometimes he's going to be scared and he's not going to be the rock. And you don't get all of both. You get a blend, and you just got to decide what side of that blend you're willing to take.
Right.
And
Right.
anybody who's expecting their husband to be the Marlboro Man and the sensitive artist is going to be very disappointed in real life men.
Right. I think
And I
that's
don't know
such a
what
good
I don't know what
point.
the comparison is. Maybe it's the partner at the law firm and Susie Homemaker. Like,
Yeah, that's a good comparison. Yeah. I mean, I think what you're saying makes a lot of sense. And I think bringing it back to the article about gay relationships and why they have higher satisfaction levels than straight relationships, like on average, I think it's like when there's not like a template laid out for you where it's like, hey, there's this autopilot default way of doing things that you can just buy into kind of unconsciously, and you have to consciously figure out, okay, well, we haven't been given that as two women or as two men, so we actually have to communicate, and we actually have to figure out what are your strengths and what are my strengths and like what makes sense for us. And I think that straight couples need to learn from that and to not fall into the default autopilot and to really question what are our strengths, let's play to our strengths and figure it out.
I don't know if this is unique to straight couples, but
Mm-hmm.
I think people are generally loath to talk about issues that may cause discomfort. No one wants to rock the boat
Yes,
or
that's
ruffle
just
feathers.
humans.
So what we do is just bury it and build up resentment.
Mm-hmm.
And then it'll come out in some fight later. But instead of just
Mm-hmm.
dealing with it as it comes up, as it happens, sitting down, hey, let's recalibrate this. I'm feeling a little
Yeah.
off, and here's
Yeah.
why. And
Yeah.
it's just, years will go by. I remember there was a matchmaker back in the day who used to say I find it so ironic that people are more willing to have sex with strangers than talk about sex with
Oh,
strangers.
they don't even want to talk about sex with the person they're having sex with.
Right. But I'm saying, like, we'll
Yeah.
have uneasy sex with someone out of
Yes.
inertia and obligation instead of saying,
100%.
what does this mean to me?
Right.
What are you like?
Right.
Like, we're so conflict averse. We're so afraid of
Yeah.
rejection or things blowing up that we
That's
just say
huge.
nothing.
Right. And I mean, really, people think they're being safer by doing that, but like what you're doing is choosing a slow deterioration in misery. That's the way I look at it. It's not safer. It's the illusion of being safer. The actual better route is to communicate and have the tough discussion and get good at having those discussions. It's just a skill set.
That's really wise, Heather. I to piggyback on that, conversations don't change people's minds. They reveal what they're already thinking. So anytime, again, I coach
Yeah.
women, if you're afraid to ask your boyfriend, are we a couple? Right? Like if like that's a perfect example of like a thing that someone's afraid to talk. We've been dating for 8 weeks. What are we? If you ask him, you'll get an answer. The asking is not gonna, if he wants to be your boyfriend, he'll be like, well, of course I'm your boyfriend. You couldn't tell him your boyfriend? Right? But you ask is not going to be like, oh, I was interested in being your boyfriend, but now that you asked me, I'm out of here.
Such a turnoff. Yeah.
So people are so afraid of having conversation. It's like not getting the results of your AIDS test because you're afraid of the results. So I'm just going to take the test. I'm never going to look at the results because I don't want to know the answer.
Right. It's like the truth is the truth, and it's there regardless, like you're saying.
And so
might as well look at it.
Hide and hide and hide. And it's more like, just bring the truth to the surface, deal with it in a calm way. No one's judging, no one's attacking. So much easier to resolve any issue if you deal with it rather than burying it.
I know. And I also want to say, I get it. It's tempting to avoid things, like as much as I'm all about, let's, uncover things and let's like do the inner work and blah, blah, blah. It's also like, there's things I don't always want to look at,
I think that's also partially cultural. I think it has a lot to just, like anything. I mean, you probably even have a greater grasp on it than I do because of sex therapy, things that are normalized as kids, good and bad, that play out much later. If you grew up in a culture that buries stuff, you're going to think that that's the way you handle things. If you grow up Jewish, you don't bury anything.
Really?
Yeah, it's all on the surface.
I like that.
Yeah, it's all on the surface. It's very, and again, this is again the good and the bad.
Yeah.
Right. There was an old Frasier episode about this where Frasier's all waspy and he can't communicate with his dad, and he's dating Amy Brenneman, and she's there with her mom, and she and her mom are like having it out, fighting, and at the end they hug and they tell each other they love each other and they make it all better. And Frasier and his dad are looking at each other like, we can't do that.
Yeah, that's
So
not our style.
right. So you're going to have more open communication, more potential friction, but it'll be
Right.
real. It'll be authentic, right? And it's there's a chance that things could get stronger and heal, as opposed to nothing
Right.
heals when you don't deal with it.
It's the only chance. That's how I look at it. It's
Right.
like that is your only chance for making it better. So I guess what we're trying to say is please go have these conversations if your gender roles are not working. And if you need us, you can hire us as your coach.
But I do think it's tricky when it's like you sign up for a job and then you don't want the job, but you can't quit, right? Like a real job,
That
you can
is
quit.
tough.
You can't. I mean, you can't. But you can't.
Yeah, like
quit
if-
your marriage, you can't quit your kids.
Yeah.
My wife can't be like, I'm just done making meals for the family. I'm just done.
Right. Or you're just done earning money. Sorry, honey, you got to be the breadwinner now.
Right.
I'm done.
Same
Yeah.
idea. And it's just that's not on the table. So then,
Yeah.
then the goal is, how do I do this? How do I get support to do this so it's not all on me?
Mm-hmm.
Right? How can I do the same thing and make it more fun? How can I maybe take it off my plate and maybe not do it or care as much about it?
Yeah.
It's life, it's work, it's entrepreneurship, it's marriage, it's kids. And I share this really openly, at least on my podcast. I wouldn't mind sharing it on yours.
Yeah.
I have genuinely like super happy marriage. It's not like a public posture I do
Right.
to for PR. I can't think of too many things that I would want to change. But I also
amazing.
recognize that there are nights that my wife has tears in her eyes because she's
Aw.
bleary-eyed from all the things that she has on her plate. And I've had readers yell at me, how dare you let her deteriorate to that condition? And I'm like foisting her into this. And
You're not responsible for
I'm
other
saying
humans.
She's taken
Yeah.
this on of being
Right.
super mom and the treasurer of the school and the class mom and the carpool
Yeah.
mom. And she's taken all of it on and
Right.
taken too much on.
Right.
Right. She can't transfer that to me. It's not that I
No.
wouldn't help her. I'm not like in my
Right.
masculine role, honey, that's a woman's. It's
No.
literally, she's bitten off more than she could chew.
Right.
And there's times where I was like, honey, you don't seem happy. What
Right.
can I do
Right.
to make you happy? Like,
And that's a good part.
you do the laundry, I could do the laundry. Like, I could do
Right.
that. Like,
Right.
I walk the dog in the morning, so she never has to deal with
Mhm.
the dog. She makes dinner because I'm working later, so she makes dinner, and the kids eat
Mhm.
different things that like nobody eats the same thing. So
Oh my
she's the only
gosh.
one who knows what's going on.
That would drive me
I'm like,
crazy.
what can we take off of your plate? And she's
Right.
someone who just adds things to her plate to the
Yeah.
point that she's ready to break. And so
Mm.
this is, I don't know if it's a gender role thing, but there's a book, Jennifer Senior. I don't know the title. I love her. She's an amazing Pulitzer Prize winning
We'll
writer.
find it and we'll put it in the notes.
It's something like, all the work and none of the fun, 21st century parenting,
Mm-hmm.
right? Where you've taken this thing. I've left my job and I'm going to take my type A-ness and I'm going to put it into my
Yeah.
kids,
Yeah.
right? But at
A lot of people do
own,
that,
at
yeah.
the expense of my own mental health.
I do think there's a little bit of a gender thing there where like women can be really self-sacrificing or like overly giving kind of at their own expense. And I do think that's somewhat encouraged more so for women than men.
Right. And the irony is that I'm in our family, I'm the self-help one. She's not the one who's like reading books on self. I'm like, honey, here, I read this 300-page book and I highlighted the passages for you for how
God,
you could
that's
take
so
something
cute,
off your plate as
Evan.
a mom. And she's like, I don't have time to read this.
You're like, I pre-highlighted it though.
I'm not kidding you.
That is like so sweet though, honestly.
I read entire parenting books and give her cliff notes.
Yeah.
And she's not, this is who she is. This is who her mom was. Like,
Mhm.
we're just bound by that.
Yeah.
Right.
But that's
And it's
nice
like
that you
anything
just kind
else.
of accept how she is. I hear that like you're not trying to change her.
Well,
And I think that's so important.
This is also a love you thing, if you might recall, the difference between constructive and destructive criticism.
Mm-hmm.
Destructive criticism is for you. I don't like something about you. Change.
Mm-hmm.
Constructive is genuinely designed to help. So the kind of things that I'm doing, this isn't about me. You're the one who's pulling an all-nighter at age 53. That doesn't feel healthy.
Right.
And you don't have you don't have the breadwinning day job to say, oh, I just have that much. Like, you've chosen this. There's got to be working moms who are not pulling all-nighters. So why are you pulling all-nighters? How could we ease the burden? What could I just instead of doing 120%, can you do 80%? Would that be as good?
Right. Right. It's so hard being like a type A person though sometimes. Like I think like the perfectionism and the type A-ness, like it's real. I fight it.
It's one of those things. And again, it's the term is, emotional labor and the going thing is men don't understand. This is my entire job, is to listen to women, right? And try to practice what I learned from women on my own marriage.
I know. It's probably why you have a
then
great marriage.
There's just, you're working with the clay that you're given. And I'm not even throwing my wife under the bus. As I said, I'm really happy.
Your wife sounds amazing from everything I've heard about her over the years.
Yeah, but you don't even it doesn't begin to capture her. It really, I'm not going to spend your podcast talking about my wife, but my wife is magic. She's just the coolest, funniest person ever. Only person who could put up with me. So I was like, I'm going to hold on to that forever.
Yeah.
And I'm a self-help person. If this isn't working, I'm going to figure out how to make it better. And she's not. I'll leave this thread on this conversation. We're first dating, and I was early phases of being a dating coach. Certainly didn't have the awareness I have now. And I was like, you got to read this book. You got to read this book. You got to take this class. like a true evangelist.
Yeah, we get so excited.
Right. And she says, Evan, I'm just going to gently point out to you that I've never gone to therapy. I've never read a self-help book. I've never taken one of these courses. I'm happier than you. So shut the fuck up. I was like, okay, mic drop, you win.
That's like a literal mic drop moment. Damn.
It was totally, and that's when I realized, you're right. She's not going to, she's going to be the same person she was in high school, and she's going to have to deal with the consequences of not evolving.
Right.
But it's usually the role reversal. The women marry men hoping the men evolve with them over time.
It's true.
And then say, where's that woman I married when she was in her 20s? How come she's not the same? And our relationship is different because of my chosen profession and whatever. So
it is unique.
It's interesting.
Well, and I think bringing it back to gender roles to kind of wrap things up. So it's like in certain ways you're the traditional guy because you're like the breadwinner and the role, and she's kind of the stay-at-home mom. But then in other ways, like you're the one who's like into like all the like self-help and relationship stuff and communication and like all of that stuff. And she's kind of like, pass.
There's a great book called Kiss Your Fights Goodbye, which we talk about in Love You. Dr. Jamie Turndorf, who's a couples counselor. And she says, I wrote this book for women because women are the emotional caretakers of the relationship. I'm the emotional caretaker of my relationship.
Right.
She's the acts of service person. Right.
Cool.
Like very much like a guy who's like, I took out the trash. So, I love you. Like that's my wife. I tell her I love her probably 10 times more than she tells me.
Oh
right.
My God.
She will show me she loves me because my mom was supposed to come out this weekend. And so she had the house cleaned and she got the dog cleaned and she made reservations and she does things.
Right.
That's her love language. But it's not the words of affirmation that I'm so fluent in because I'm a writer. So once you kind of like dig into all of this stuff and you say, okay, this is who she is. She's not going to change. This is who I am. And as long as we could accept the 10% where we just don't really overlap, we're going to have a really great relationship. And this is usually what I talk about on podcasts. It's not so much gender roles as much as what does a healthy long-term relationship look and feel like? Because a lot of people haven't experienced that.
Yeah, that's beautiful. And I think hearing that about you and your wife is like there's part traditional and part not traditional. And, maybe that's the direction we're going in of just like, we all take different roles in different areas, regardless of how we identify gender-wise. Yeah.
Right. So that's everybody. Like old school people like me, cis, het, straight, white guy. I'm not trying to impose anything. I'm only saying here's something that worked for me. If what you're doing isn't working for you, right, in terms of the partners you're choosing and their ability to stick long-term, maybe there's something to explore that you can do differently, make different choices with partners that are going to be long-term more compatible.
All right. So to conclude, if people are like, oh, I like what this Evan guy is putting down, where can I find more about him? where can they find you, Evan?
Oh, I'm endlessly Googleable, Heather, but to save you the trouble, you can go to evanmarckatz.com, EVANMARCKATZ.com. Giving your readers a gift today, they could put in
Oh, that's so nice.
evanmarckatz.com/dating. And it's 8 massive mistakes you're making in dating. And it is 25 pages, and every page you'll be like, oh shit, I'm doing that. Yeah, no, I'm also doing that.
I might go
So
review
it's
it
one
as
of the things
well.
you get from the gift of genuinely listening to women for 4 hours a day.
Yeah.
People will reveal themselves. So if you enjoy that, certainly check out my Love You podcast. And I give away, follow me on every social channel, Evan Marc Katz or Evan Marc Katz fan. I give away a lot of free stuff. And I'm just really thrilled to be here with you, Heather.
Thank
You're really
you.
engaging. Very different podcast interview than I normally do.
Yeah.
No script, just kind of riffing. And so that was just a lot of fun.
Yay! Well, thank you so much for being here, Evan. And if you guys have been listening, Evan is the real deal. I can vouch for it. So check out his podcast and website, and we will link to those in the show notes. And thank you so much, Evan.